So it seems that the really impossible thing that we try to understand on this spiritual path is the paradox of how life is absolutely meaningless and meaningful simultaneously. It seems that the meaningless side of things is the side that we don't like. It sounds cold, it sounds depressing, like there's no point in living, there's no point in getting up in the morning if it's all meaningless. If there's no point, it sounds terrible. And the flip side, the meaningfulness, we tend to like that because it makes us feel special. If my personal life is very meaningful, then that makes me a special person. That gives me a reason to do things, motivation. Because somehow in society it's considered meaningful. Perhaps our parents, our teachers, our family, friends consider what we're doing or how we are meaningful. But for anyone who has explored the meaninglessness in their lives, perhaps for someone who's explored being depressed, it's really about facing the reality of the meaninglessness and seeing that it is true that there is no point in doing anything, and any reason that we normally do stuff is because we are trying to be special. We're trying to be someone that's different and special and unique and original, so that people like us more, so that we can survive better in the world. So we run from this meaninglessness. We try to fill our lives with something more meaningful, with a story about how special we are. Anything to avoid this meaninglessness. The thing is that the meaninglessness actually isn't depressing. It's depressing if you think about it, if you take it on as an attitude, if you try to live as if life is meaningless, for me, then I can understand why you'd find that very depressing and might even consider suicide. But this paradox really is how it is that whatever is happening for its own reason, for its own meaning, for its own point. It doesn't need a story of how meaningful it is. It doesn't need a story of how meaningful I am and my personal life is. It's about no longer running from the meaninglessness, facing it, no longer running from death, from nothingness, from emptiness, facing it, recognizing that this is the way it is. This is part of life. Death is part of life. It doesn't fit nicely into our ideas. It can seem a little shocking, a little uncaring. But that's only when we take it on as an attitude or a way of thinking. It doesn't make sense that life could be meaningless and meaningful at the same time. It's not something that we can understand in our minds. It's not something that we can try and live by, because these two sides of the paradox are completely contradictory. But we don't need to understand it in order for it to be the way it is. Nothing happening, and yet this is happening. No reason for anything to happen, and yet here this is what's happening, for its own sake, without this needing to have a reason. Without the story of what it means about me or my life. It's just the way it is. It's not depressing and it's not amazingly wonderful. It doesn't need the story in thought that is put onto it. It doesn't need the commentary that places it into a box of good or bad. Life just is as it is. This is the paradox of nothing and everything, of non-duality and duality, life and death. Separation and no separation. There's much more to say about it, and much less to say. I mean, in fact, nothing to say, because it is simply the way it is. But of course, thought can have many questions about it, about how it fits into our own knowing, our own experience. How can it be like this? So I invite you to explore this with me, this paradox today. Let's really look at that. Because it seems to come up again and again in lots of other questions that come up in these meetings. It's always about the paradox, really.